My name is Gabi Robledo, and I'm a mindset coach, athlete, and entrepreneur. I grew up living in an RV and traveling the world with my family. I was unschooled, socially rejected, and shared 200 square feet of living space with 6 other people. But I was fulfilled. I was fulfilled because through an unconventional means of climbing mountains, surfing frigid waters, and driving through the night to set up tents in the middle of nowhere, I had discovered how to unlock my personal power, my purpose, and embrace my inner warrior. It was summer of 2016, and my family and I had just landed in a foreign country with nothing more than a backpack on each of our backs, a climbing pack, and a huge surfboard bag. Our tent is set up in this beautiful lime green meadow besides a rustic barn, and the family and I are busy setting up camp. It could have been like any other day, camping back home here in the US, if it weren't for the fact that it was broad daylight out at midnight. The campground was eerily quiet, and there was no civilization, no grocery stores, no restaurants within 100 miles of us. So we sat around the picnic table that evening, sharing a single pot of beans and rice with one spork. Somehow we were surprised by the fact that we didn't sleep all night long because, as it turns out, the midnight sun also stays out until 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. I was shocked that day, not by any one thing, but by the entire experience. I'd never imagined that the world could be anything different than what I knew it to be. So from that moment on, I stopped seeing the world through the lens of what is, and I started seeing it through the lens of what could be. After a couple weeks of camping in Germany and Ireland and picking up an RV in the Netherlands, our RV is now parked on the side of the road on a mountain pass in the Swiss Alps. My mom and I gear up and begin hiking out to the base of a massive granite rock face, while the rest of the family stays in the RV on the side of the road. We put on harnesses and tie into ropes and begin to take turns leading one another up a climbing route. 3 hours and 800 vertical feet later, we reach the summit of this monolith. And I look back and see the most spectacular view I'd ever set my eyes on. A mint-colored alpine lake is sitting beneath this meadowy glacial mountainside. I feel like I'm on top of the world. And though the view was amazing, I'm not sure if it would have been the same if it hadn't taken so much work to reach that point. So for the first time in my life at 15 years old, I remember thinking to myself, it's the challenge that makes life spectacular. After a couple more weeks, it's fall now and winter is looming, and our RV has now made it to the far west corners of northern Spain. Our RV is parked at a cliff overlooking a glassy ocean. My mom and I, as avid surfers, sit there for nearly an hour deciding if we're going to paddle out or not. Eventually, I decide to go for it, so I put on my wetsuit, grab my surfboard, and I run down to the shore while the rest of my family plays on the beach. With an aura of serious confidence, I paddle out into a lineup of intimidating Spaniards who I hope are going to share a few waves with me. After nearly 30 minutes, I'm finally in the right place at the right time, and the once intimidating Spaniards start cheering me on. So I go for it. I paddle as hard as I can, press my board down, stand up onto my feet, and dig my arm into the wave to keep myself upright. The world goes quiet, and it seems like I have tunnel vision, except for the fact that it seems like I can hear every minute movement of the ocean beneath my feet. My heart is beaming. It's over so fast, and it's the best wave of my life, so I decide to paddle back out. But within the blink of an eye, the once calm and glassy waters are replaced by a stormy chop, and currents begin to pull powerfully in all these different directions. Like nothing I'd ever seen before, the waves seem to suddenly double in size, and the rip current is starting to pull me out to sea. I try to paddle in to stay in position, but it's no use. I can't stay put. Though there are others in the same situation as me, as the only kid and the only girl in the water, I start to freak out a little bit. I realize that my only option is to enlist every ounce of mental and physical strength I had, and I get out of the rip current and I go paddle over to where the ugly, beastly waves are breaking that no one's even trying to catch at this point. I paddle onto the first wave I see and fall into the whitewash just to make it to shore. It was the most terrifying day of my life, and yet I don't regret paddling out that day. because it taught me a priceless mental strength that was crucial for the years that lied ahead. By the end of that trip, I had a newfound sense of intrinsic energy that I now know as personal power. And with that personal power, I began to get more and more ambitious with not only my adventures, but also in my dreams for the future. When I got back to my hometown after that trip, it was like a totally different world. I had grown so used to experiences of challenge, grit, flow state, deep connections with my family, and truly questioning the purpose of my existence, and it was a totally contrasting reality. Self-awareness, dreams, and passions didn't seem to matter to anyone else. All anyone seemed to care about was the latest gossip, what he said and what she did, the social media trends, and the quantity of people you were texting at any given time. When I tried to share stories, my friends would look down at their phones. And when I'd ask questions like, what are you passionate about? I was met with blank stares. Of course, I was the weird one, but it was so apparent that the real me, the one who wanted to chase passion and thought life was meaningful, was not accepted. Because I was so young, there was a part of me that wanted so bad to just conform. It would have been so easy. I just had to change my thoughts, my words, my actions, and I'd be seen and heard and validated by the group. But I couldn't get myself to do it, because there was this even stronger feeling inside of me that knew there was something more to life. And after nearly 2 years of experiences like that with my peers, I promised myself that I wouldn't change to be accepted and I would never lose my curiosity. That was the moment that changed everything, because unknowingly, I was choosing an intrinsic value system. I refused to let my happiness be dictated by how the people in the world around me decided to show up. So instead, I chose values that came from within. I chose passion, I chose authenticity, I chose wisdom. And from those values, I created a vision for my life, and I chose to believe in a spectacular future that I couldn't quite describe in words. So I kept pursuing. I kept pushing outside my comfort zone, and that fueled my personal power enough to become disciplined about my vision. The discipline did pay off, but it wasn't until 2019, nearly 4 years later, that it paid off. I was 18 years old, and I was behind the wheel of Momo, our 30-foot Class C RV, while navigating around boulder-sized potholes on the road to Alaska. We spent the month roaming around the state in search of climbing and hiking and mountain biking, and one day, we were out camping in this stunning little ski town known as Goodwood, Alaska. It was on that day that I happened to open my phone and scroll through social media, and I realized I was missing out on a supposedly very monumental day in a teenager's life. I realized it should have been my high school graduation that day, and that was simultaneously the same moment where I realized that all the work I put in for years with no reward had finally paid off. Because the small little travel blog that I co-founded when I was only 15 years old had transformed into a successful online adventure travel brand. So instead of spending that day attending a graduation ceremony with 1,000 of my closest friends, family members, and peers, instead, I woke up to a life in the wilderness. I spent that day hiking up to a glacial valley where my family and I sat and had lunch at this secluded cabin that overlooked a frozen lake beneath the mountains. We hiked back down and shared laughter and food and ideas in the small confines of our RV, rid of modern-day comforts like running water and electricity. And yet, because of those last two things, many people would consider that the biggest lose. But to me, it was the biggest win. The next year, I was out climbing the Middle Teton. If you've ever had the blessing of getting to stare up at the stunning Teton range, you know how sheer those mountains look. After climbing just one of those mountains personally, I can promise you that they're actually steeper than they look. The route that we ascended was not difficult from a technical standpoint, but it seemed to only add to the strenuousness. The route included more than 3 hours of boulder hopping in each direction, which made our quads burn. And to top it off while ascending, we had no view of the western horizon, which meant that every time a small black cloud rolled into view, I was worried we were about to get stuck in a massive thunderstorm. With every step I took up the mountain, I wondered why I was even choosing to do this. But after all these years, I knew discipline. And I knew the payoff of standing on that mountain would be worth it. So I'm on the final stretch, climbing hand over hand on a mix between rock scree and rock features. I'm so close, I'm so excited to reach the peak that my lungs can't keep up with the speed that I want to travel at. I finally crest the summit and see the grandest view I'd ever set my eyes on. The Grand Teton stands before me, and alpine wilderness extends to the horizon. The gratitude and bliss I felt emanating out of my chest was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. I let go and I surrendered to that feeling because you work so hard to reach that moment, you don't want to waste it. As I hiked back down the mountain that day, that's when I learned the final key: surrender. As the years went on, everything I learned slowly led me toward more and more purpose and fulfillment in my life. But at the same time, I still felt like something was missing because I was still plagued by this looming weight that I wasn't good enough. It was an omnipresent inner dialogue, and even though I was aware of it and had redefined my value system, I couldn't let go. I didn't realize that what I experienced on the summit of the Middle Teton had to be applied to my whole life. So last summer, I was out backpacking the Cirque of the Towers here in the Wind River Range. To reach the Cirque, you have to make a long drive down a dirt road followed by a fairly strenuous 4-hour hike across a mountain pass. But across 26 different countries, I've never seen anything as beautiful as the Cirque of the Towers. So, shocker, every step is worthwhile. As I was sitting there, underneath this stunning mountainscape, looking out beyond the turquoise blue waters of Lonesome Lake, that's when I realized I finally found it. By it, I mean the inner warrior that I had been searching for. After spending close to a decade running into the same mental wall over and over and over and over again, I realized that it was me who was putting up the wall. So in that moment, I saw that I could simply let go. For years, I thought that my thoughts, my emotions, my beliefs weren't changeable, weren't solvable, and I was simply a victim to them, and I had to work around them. For years, I thought it was all about the vision and the pursuit, but I knew that this was the final step. So as I sat there watching the sunset over Pingola Peak, it was a direct experience of letting go. Letting go of my limitations, letting go of my attachments, letting go of my not enoughness. I surrendered my attachment to how I believed the outcome needed to be, and I embraced the thought I had under the midnight sun nearly 6 years ago. And I said, what could be? I surrendered all those things that for all these years I thought were protecting me, all those things my ego said, but in my ego's defense, it was just doing its job. Leaving the winds, I thought that maybe the experience was just random and didn't mean anything. But it was more than that, because from that day forward, I've experienced more joy and fulfillment than ever before in my life. I seemed to become a magnet for great opportunities, and for the first time in my life, I knew I had a purpose. So with awareness, values, courage, discipline, and surrender, you will cultivate a mastery over your mind, body, and soul, and that is what makes you a warrior. I may have had a unique upbringing, but I'm not special. In the end, what has allowed me to lead a fulfilling life are all things that anyone can do, because the point of it all is that it comes down to your inner world, not your external environment. You've likely gone through your whole life using labels and letters and numbers and groups outside of you to fulfill a feeling that you're chasing. But the secret to your most fulfilling life is not something extrinsic. You're already enough. You're already capable. You are already strong and graceful and courageous and worthy, and whatever the word is, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you choose a word and put the power back inside of yourself. We think we're defined by and limited to a system of rules outside of us. We say things like, I have to, I should, they told me, acting as if we've signed our names on 1,000 different contracts called life. But the only reason we have those contracts is because we never stop and recalibrate and choose the personal rules of engagement that we want to live our lives by. You get to choose the rules for life. And as long as those rules are intrinsic and cause no harm, you will always get to dictate your level of happiness. Once you choose the rules, believe it or not, the rest becomes easy. You let those values fuel a goal. and you let that goal challenge your comfort zone, but that fuels your personal power. Now you stay true to this mindset with discipline, and when things don't go as planned, you surrender, you let go, you release your attachment to past emotions and future outcomes. It's time for you to embrace your inner warrior, because the goal of being a warrior is not to fight some opponent out there. It's about taking your power back and realizing that the biggest thing standing in your way from your dreams and your purpose is you. You have a completely unique soul with spectacular gifts, talents, and traits that no one in the world has except for you. You are the hero of your story, and you are here to embody that, create that, and express it. But that journey begins when you embrace your personal power. So start now and push outside your comfort zone. Define the values that you want to live your life by, and make the choice to unlock the warrior within. Thank you.